Okay, I'm doing this further analysis of Peter Windsor's assessment of Abu Dhabi. And there's a reason that I'm going to split this into two parts. It's a 15-minute long video of Peter Windsor's that he did on the 13th of December 2021, the day after Abu Dhabi. But the reason that I'm doing this is people see people like Peter Windsor as an authentic source of information, and therefore they will have their opinions swayed, their beliefs swayed by people of this profile. Obviously, they'll firstly, in the first instance, trust the likes of Martin Brundle, who they see as the authentic source of information. And then they will trust the likes of Andrew Benson, who they will see as the authentic, unbiased source of information. And then they will get further confirmation of that from the likes of Peter Windsor, who presents himself as having expertise and as being this balanced view. And what then happens is you can go on to other forms of social media. No, this is on Twitter. This is one of the replies I had to a different video. And the reply was, "Thanks for the reply, but it seems your video's like-dislike ratio backfired." Okay, mate, so I put, "So the new scientific way of assessing whether or not information being presented is valid or not is looking at the likes to dislikes ratio. Let's see how many likes this video has got, and that will determine whether the information presented in it is real or not. Whether we should believe that or whether we should believe everything else that's being said. How many likes has it got? And that will tell us whether we should watch it or not." This is the world, isn't it? And then this is one of the comments on the first Peter Windsor video, I think it was, where it was. This one that's middle of the page, it said, "So-called experts, you say in the description, and yet we're supposed to believe a random person on YouTube with just over 1,000 subs. You've accused just about every single person who ever set foot on UAE soil in December 2021 of being in on this fix. Grow up." Yeah, that's the grown-up thing to do, isn't it? To not analyse things. Stop being a child by analysing things and grow up. Thank you for that. Life doesn't work that way. Okay, I don't know how your life is working out, mate, but it's not the world that I'm living in. That to be grown up is just to ignore crime and corruption. Ignore crime, corruption and injustice. Grow up. Oh, okay, that's going to work really well. I'm not going to go into the rest of his bullshit comment because clearly doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. But again, this is somebody that rather than believe a random person on YouTube with just over 1,000 subscribers, I will believe somebody with 170,000 subscribers. They've got more subscribers than you, so I will believe them, not you. This is the metric by which you determine the authenticity of the information presented. And these people are allowed to fucking vote. You know, this is the world we live in. You know, they've got clearly no education, no understanding as to regard to what constitutes validity of information, but they've got a social media account and an opinion, and they want to share that. Happy days. So we're going to go into Windsor's video, and this is why I say it's part of the problem, is that people like this put forward their presentation, and that gives people validity, and that confirms this opinion, and therefore confirms beliefs. And it's a problem. So here we go. I'll just make sure this is zeroed, and we'll play him through. Here we go.
Well, a little bit of dust has settled since I recorded the video last night, but it's now Monday midday. A little bit more time to think about things, but equally more information coming out all the time as to where the whole Abu Dhabi episode may go. Just to be clear, Mercedes actually issued two protests after the race. One was that Lewis was passed momentarily by Max Verstappen when they were behind the safety car, and secondly, that
downplay things by momentarily,
that the safety car was brought into the pits before the track was in condition.
Look at the exaggerated hand movements. There's a lot of arm waving, hand movements, lots of gesturing to, oof. Oh, Craig Slater's a big hand mover as well, and this is a distraction technique to encourage the individual viewing to perceive things in a certain way. It's done by design.
To go racing again, and that of course is the key issue, and that remains out there. As for the first one, the stewards agreed that Max did momentarily pass Lewis, but that was acceptable within the bounds of fast, slow, warming up the tyres. Anyway, getting on to clause 48 of the International Sporting Code, which deals with lapped and unlapped cars behind the safety car. And it's very clear the way the rules are written, 48.12 and 48.13, that the lapped cars should unlap themselves, be allowed to unlap themselves, in other words, pass the race leader, and come back to the back of the field into their correct position before the safety car comes back into the pits and before the race is restarted. And as Mercedes pointed out, and as everybody saw on television, 5 of the lapped cars did that, but 3 others did not. And that's because...
Okay, 5 of the lapped cars did not do that, and I'll show you what happened. So this is the situation. This is the situation when those 5 cars, 5 of 8, were released. Have they caught the back of the pack? No, they haven't. They've not unlapped themselves, have they? Okay, they're not through that process of unlapping themselves because they have just rounded turn 5 when the rest of the competitors are set off to race. In fact, these 5 are actually being set off to race ahead of the race restart, which is not allowed to happen. They're effectively started when they cross the start-finish line on the lap that they're supposed to be making it around that track to catch up with the back of the pack. So that's invalid as well. Now, the purpose of this is so that Norris is not left disadvantaged relative to Gasly, who he was the previously competing against prior to Latifi's crash. In this position, Norris has no chance of competing with Gasly. Does Windsor talk about that? Does he explain the purpose of this procedure, or does he just state what 48.12 says without explaining to viewers this is the purpose of that, and that's why it is essential that it's done. This is why it's important. But he said, well, it happened for 5 of them. Well, it didn't happen for 5 of them, because those 5 that were released and gotten out of the way of Verstappen, because that's all it was, 5 cars were removed out of the way of Verstappen to enable Verstappen to beat Hamilton. That's all that happened. Okay, nothing else happened. 5 cars were removed out of the way of Verstappen to let Verstappen beat Hamilton on soft compound tyres. That's all that happened. But these 5, they weren't given a chance. That didn't happen for those 5, and yet he described it as that being the case. And we'll rewind and just prove that. So again, we'll go through what Windsor says.
Anyway, getting on to clause 48 of the International Sporting Code, which deals with lapped and unlapped cars behind the safety car. And it's very clear the way the rules are written, 48.12 and 48.13, that the lapped cars should unlap themselves, be allowed to unlap themselves, in other words, pass the race leader, and come back to the back of the field into their correct position before the safety car comes back into the pits and before the race is restarted.
Okay, that's what needs to happen. Now, by the letter of those regulations, they don't have to fully catch, but I've explained that aspect of it multiple times. But the purpose of that additional lap of the safety car is to give them the opportunity. Okay?
Mercedes pointed out, and as everybody saw on television, 5 of the lapped cars did that, but 3 others did not.
Okay, 5 did not do that. As I said to you, 5 did not do that. 5 were left in this position here, out at turn 5. They didn't make it round and rejoin the back of the pack. So, let's not lie to people, and let's not suggest that they did with misinformation.
And that's because they were not told to do that. There was also confusion initially over Michael Massey, the race director's message to the teams, to Mercedes and Red Bull, that the lapped cars would not be unlapping themselves on this occasion.
Okay, why would there be confusion over that? If that was normal procedure, nobody would be confused. It's not normal procedure. The reason why it's not normal procedure is because you're not allowed to go racing like that. So is that not quite clear that that would confuse people if to say, well, I'm confused about what you're doing here because you're trying to do a procedure that's not allowed within the rules of the sport. Quite simple, isn't it?
Occasion. Now, again, just to reiterate the point I made last night, that decision, or those decisions, correct or otherwise, by Michael Massey, were all
correct or otherwise. So we're not saying wrong. We're not using the word wrong. We're saying correct or otherwise. When you say something is absolutely wrong, people get the message it's absolutely wrong. If you use the term, oh, correct or otherwise, people think, oh, is it correct or is it just a little bit, not sure. These are what these fucking validators do. Oh, is that correct or otherwise? Or is it fucking wrong? Because there's a fucking difference. And it makes a clear message in people's heads whether something's wrong or not. Or just correct or otherwise. Wanker.
all made, of course, under massive pressure, and this is a championship decider.
There is no excuse for pressure. All sporting officials are under pressure to make the correct decisions. Using pressure as an excuse for making a corrupt decision is not acceptable.
But beyond that, the fear of this race, this championship decider, finishing behind the safety car and not...
The fear of it finishing... Why is there a fear of it ending behind the safety car? If the rules dictate that that's what needs to happen, that is what you do. Why are you scared of that? A football match can end in a 0-0 draw. Oh, the fear of it ending in a 0-0 draw because the spectators will not be excited by it. Made that referee under so much pressure to somehow give one of those teams a goal. Utter bullshit.
As a sprint race, if you like, to the checkered flag, which would be much better for the show. Now, when the...
Much better for the show. It's a sport, it's not a show. A sprint race to the finish being much better for the show is irrelevant. Okay? It's a sport is not there to excite the kids that we've attracted to see the show. It's not about putting on a show. Sport is authentic sport. It can be exciting, it may not be exciting, but it needs to be authentic.
Protest was held at the track after the race. Michael Massey, the race director, correctly pointed...
Nice graphic here. Massey's overriding authority with a question mark, but we have to create the graphic here.
To Article 15.3 in the FIA International Sporting Code, which says that as race director, he has overriding authority in a number of matters, including the use of the safety car. Now, on that basis, the stewards wanting to get a result, wanting to get out of there, and this is the World Championship, let's stop all the discussion, said, yeah, good point. Doesn't really matter what happened behind the safety car. Michael Massey can basically do what he likes. Well, of course...
I've made several videos about that. Yeah, the race director could just throw that safety car out on the track and then he can bring it back in when he wants. And that enables you to manipulate outcomes. I'll follow this video up with an example of that. Many of you will have already seen it. It's ridiculous.
That was the stewards and that was Michael Massey and that was the two teams. If you put this now in the hands of barristers, which I suspect Mercedes will do now, and they had a barrister on site anyway, ready for any dramas that may occur. But if you put this in the hands of barristers, I think, reading through the regulations, which I've now had time to do.
You tell us what you think, Peter. Let us know what you think in the comments section to this one, please, Peter.
Properly. I think there is a problem here for the Massey argument. And the problem is that it's all very well to say that he has overriding authority, but what does he have overriding authority of? What does it mean, the safety car? Because if you go back now to look at clause 48...
I'll tell you, Peter, okay, because clearly you don't know because you've asked the question. He has overriding authority on the grounds of safety and sporting fairness. Okay, if he thinks that it's not safe to go racing, he keeps them lapping behind the safety car. That's his discretionary use. That's his overriding authority. I'm using that safety car because it's not safe and I've got the authority to make it safe, and I'm going to keep it safe by using the safety car. I'm using my overriding authority because we've not returned ourselves to a condition where there is sporting fairness been applied to all competitors in this sport. So I will keep that safety car lapping until all the competitors have caught up fully. We've reset this race situation to a zero situation. Everybody is lined up in the correct race order, nose to tail. And now we've reached that condition, we are ready to go racing again. I will keep the safety car on track until that condition has been met, which he did on 4 separate occasions. As I've always evidenced, it is Spain 2019, Brazil 2019, Sakir 2020, and Eiffel 2020. 4 times Massey did that process in that way. That's his overriding authority. Once you deploy the safety car, once you make the decision to deploy the safety car on the grounds of safety, because there's a problem, so you deploy the safety car. Once you've deployed it, you follow the procedures that you need to follow that apply to the deployment of a safety car. As soon as you do deploy the safety car, you nullify racing. That gets nullified for everybody, and before you resume racing, the restart condition has to be reset to the start conditions of a race, because that race is effectively being restarted from a zero position, and that restarts like that for every competitor. That is the purpose of those regulations. That is the purpose of those regulations. Those regulations are underpinned by the FIA International Sporting Code. It is very, very simple, and nobody articulates it that way.
12 and 48.13, it's very clear that all the points under those clauses are written chronologically, and they're all predicated by safety issues. If this is done, then that can be done. If that is done, this can be done. And it's also interesting to see that clause...
Some in our comment section, our most abundant commenter with about 3,000 comments on my 200 videos, doesn't seem to understand that concept.
48.13, which follows 12, doesn't begin with the phrase, notwithstanding anything happens in 12, this is what could happen. In other words, because it doesn't say that, they're very interrelated. All of these clauses are interrelated. So if you want to take it to an extreme, you could say they refer to things like...
If you want to take it to an extreme. So again, you're giving people, oh, would you like this option? Would you like to interpret it this way? It's nothing to do with taking it to an extreme. This just is what it is. It's not about taking it to an extreme. Once you deploy the safety car, this is what you do. Oh, if you want to take that to an extreme, what the fuck are you talking about? Some of them early regulations within 48 are just descriptive things about this is what happens. This is the procedure for this. These are the procedures that will be enacted during this. It's nothing about taking something to an extreme.
Who is allowed to drive the safety car, where the safety car is at the start of the race, how and when the teams and competitors are notified, and it follows if they are notified when the safety car is deployed, when the safety car must display its lights.
Extreme!
And whether cars can continue to race while under the safety car. All these critical issues.
Whether the cars can continue to race under the safety car, well, clearly you can't. Once the safety car is deployed, racing is neutralised. We know that, so why have you even worded it like that?
Let alone the business of the lapped and the unlapped cars are all safety issues and follow sequentially and logically on top of one another. And because of that, they are phrased as directives and are prohibitive regulations.
There you go. They are phrased as directives. They are a set of procedures. They're not guidelines for judgment calls. They are a set of procedures, directives. You do this. They're not, oh, well, you could choose whether or not to do this. Or, yeah, have a think about what you think is the right thing to do in this situation. No, it's a set of procedures.
As distinct from variables that the race director can play around with. I think that is what the barristers will argue. I guess Michael Massey will say, well, no.
The barristers will argue, yeah? Or it just is. You have to be a barrister to argue that, do you? Or you just can't tell people that's what it is. That's clearly what it is. But just the barristers will argue that.
May well be, but it still says I have overriding control. And I think that's where the arguments now.
No, you don't have overriding control, because this notion of overriding control is in the example given in my couple of videos that I did, which were, from a comedy aspect of it, of the race director just throwing the safety car out on the track, closing the gaps between some of the competitors that he chooses to close the gaps on, and then just pulling the safety car in and letting them go racing again. What has he done there? He's manipulated a race. He has closed the gaps that have been earned over the duration of a race by just chucking the safety car out on track, bunching a few competitors up, bringing the safety car back in and setting them off to race again. The race director doesn't have the authority to do that. That's manipulating a race. That's artificially injecting drama. He doesn't have the authority to do that. That clearly shows you that he doesn't have the overriding authority of the safety car to do whatever he wants with it. What it is once you deploy the safety car, you have to carry out the safety car procedures. You have to do that. His authority extends beyond the minimum of those procedures, which are a judgment call on the grounds of safety concern or sporting fairness. And they extend beyond the minimum procedures that he must carry out once he's deployed that safety car.
Now we'll focus on how much you can play around with the safety car regulations, because
you can't.
There's no doubt that according to the regulations, and the more you read them, the more you see it, there was a massive mistake made in that closing lap of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. There's no way in the world that race should have been restarted by the safety car coming in, because there were either two options. Either Michael Massey correctly, I guess is where you could say he has overriding control, he could correctly have said, because of the time factor, because we want to get this race finished, there will be no unlapping by the lap cars. They'll all...
Where does it say that? Show me the regulation that says that. And there isn't one. This is a set of procedures. The moment you deploy the safety car, you follow the procedures. Those procedures are, the cars will bunch behind the safety car. That will enable the time and the safety aspect of this for the course to be cleared, for that track to be made safe. Once that track is declared safe, you have to do the unlapping procedure. That safety car has to stay on track for a further lap to allow those unlapped cars to catch the back of the pack. And then once you've returned it to that zero position and all cars are lined up one behind the other with the gaps between them all being effectively nothing, they're all in the correct race order, that is when you can resume racing again. There is no provision for resuming that race with lapped cars in situ. You read the rules. Just read the rules. Doesn't give that option. Where is everybody magicking this? Oh, but you could do that. Why? Where does it say that? It doesn't say that. This is something that you've been conditioned to believe that is not true. And the reason it's not true is quite simple. Not only does it not say that, look at the sporting implications of that taking place. And the sporting implications are, it's quite simply, you look at Lando Norris relative to Pierre Gasly. Prior to the Latifi crash, Norris was within 12 seconds of Gasly. You resume racing without releasing Norris. Norris is the first car behind Hamilton. Gasly is the last car at the end of that safety car snake. So effectively, Norris is an entire lap behind Gasly. You cannot do that to somebody's race just because somebody's had a crash. If some of those competitors bunch right up on the tail of the car they were previously behind, every car has to be allowed to bunch up on the tail of the car that they were previously behind. And same conditions apply to every competitor. You cannot resume racing like that. It's not an option. There is nothing in the rules or regulations which even present it as being an option, and yet still these so-called experts are saying that that was still one way of going racing again. You've not been allowed to do that since the start of the 2012 season. You have not been allowed to do that since the start of the 2012 season.
All stay in the track position they are. Or he could have said, we will have all the lap cars unlapping themselves and it will be a safety car finish. But he didn't. He actually went down the middle there and split it between the two. And that's what this contention is all about. And if you look at this from...
So again, what you're trying to do is present some sort of acceptance of it. Oh, he didn't do either. He went down the middle. Oh, it's a compromise. And that's what the controversy is all about.
Let's look at it from the point of view of the two teams now. If you look at it from the point of view of Red Bull, I think you would be saying right now, well, it's all done and dusted. Max is world champion. We're the deserved champions. We won the championship. Brilliant. And I think, and then they would go on to say, and we won that sprint, that one lap sprint, because we were clever enough and brave enough, if you like, to bring Max in and put him on the soft red tyres. And that...
You were brave enough, were you? You were clever enough and brave enough. So what was brave about that decision? Okay, what was brave? Oh, they stood to lose what? Nothing. You weren't going to lose position by putting Max onto soft tyres. In the event that that could have been cleared up in time and the lapped cars released on lap 56 and the mandatory safety car done on lap 57 and it being valid resumed for a valid racing lap on lap 58, you would have benefited from your fortune of being in a position of being able to pit without losing track position and getting out there and taking advantage. Nothing to do with bravery. Bravery is when you're taking a risk when you stand to possibly lose something. You didn't do that. You were brave, I guess, in retiring Sergio Perez, risking the possibility of Lewis Hamilton possibly retiring in those last three laps, and then you having thrown away a 1-2 in that race, which would have won you the Constructors' Championship. And having spent at least 120 million on a season, you've then conceded your hand with 3 laps of the season to go. And all of your employees for your team, which will get a bonus linked to your team's finishing position in the Constructors' Championship, relative to the prize money that you earn, you'd have had to explain to them why it was you retired Perez's car. When quite a few of them back at the factory will probably go, well, why did you do that then? Because there was not a lot, didn't seem a lot wrong with that engine. But maybe that was the bravery in Red Bull's decision.
That is what Mercedes didn't do, and that's how they lost the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and that's why they're protesting now and making all that fuss. If you're Mercedes, on the other hand, you say, yeah, but we took the gamble that there wasn't going to be enough time to clear up the mess. We didn't want to relinquish track position in case...
A gamble based upon what? Based upon statistics, based upon the knowledge of what was actually unfolding, what was taking place, and therefore the likelihood of what was going to unfold. What was going to unfold being a safety car finish. If it's likely that there's going to be a safety car finish, you do not lose track position. You would be foolish to think, what we'll do, we think it's going to be a safety car finish based upon the amount of time left in this race and the amount of time it's likely to take to clear it up. What we'll do, although we think it's going to be a safety car finish, what we will do, we will pit our driver for fresh tyres, which will most likely result in us losing track position because it's likely that Red Bull will keep Max out on track if we pit. And so we'll put Lewis in second on fresh softs in the hope that actually, should it be a safety car finish, which is what we're anticipating, the race director will break the rules of the sport to set it up for Lewis to get that one lap so that he can get that lead back. That's the logical decision that Mercedes should have made, is it? They should have made a gamble that the race director was going to break the rules of the sport to give Lewis the chance back of getting first back if they'd have pitted him for fresh soft tyres, yeah? Is that the approach that Mercedes should have taken? Wanker.
Max stayed out, and then we had the two cars very close, racing closely to one another, which we didn't want. And we knew there were going to be two options facing Michael Massey. Either Max was going to have to find his way through 5 cars before he got to Lewis.
Not an option. Those procedures of 48, the whole of the safety car article, as soon as you deploy the safety car, these are the procedures you go through before you go racing. There is not the provision to start racing by removing that safety car before you've carried out those procedures. So don't present that it's a possibility.
Lewis in 1 lap, or the 5 cars were going to have to unlap themselves, and by the time they'd done that, the checker flag would have been out. So it wasn't really a gamble, it was a fait accompli. We'd won the Grand Prix. That's what Mercedes will be saying. And then there's a third factor, of course, which is the Michael Massey factor. And why
Right, here we go.
He did take the decisions that he did. And I think this is a humane thing, because it comes down...
This is a humane thing, right? This is ridiculous now. This is ridiculous. Here we go.
To Mercedes having this massive team of strategists and analysts of data, and Red Bull having this massive team of strategists and analysts of data, and Michael Massey in the middle, working for the FIA, with his own little team, nothing like the same resources in terms of predicting outcomes and thus giving him data, instant data, on how he should react to any given situation. And
so, we've got a referee of a football match. You have Manchester City with all these players and all these analysts looking at all of the data. And we have Liverpool with all of these players and all of these analysts looking at the data. But the referee's just one man, and he doesn't have these analysts to analyse all of the data. Why is that? Because he doesn't need to. He's the referee. All he needs to do is referee and apply the rules of the sport. He doesn't need to look at the data. All he needs to do is observe the situation and apply the rules to that situation that he is refereeing a sport. What are you going on about, Windsor? What are you going on about? I'll just let you listen to it again. Here we go.
And I think this is a humane thing, because it comes down to Mercedes having this massive team of strategists and analysts of data, and Red Bull having this massive team of strategists and analysts of data, and Michael Massey in the middle, working for the FIA, with his own little team, nothing like the same resources in terms of predicting outcomes and thus giving him data, instant data, on how he should react to any given situation.
So a referee needs to be able to predict outcomes, does he? Or does he just need to referee the sport in accordance with the rules of the sport? Does he make his judgment calls based on, oh, that's going to make them win the game if I decide to do that, oh, so I won't do that? Or does he just have to make that decision because that's what the rules of the sport dictate you make the decision as being? If you're confused about the answer to that question, you don't understand. You know, just back out of the comment section if you don't understand the answer to that question. Okay, just back off. This is a ridiculous concept, but this is again something that Windsor is presenting as excusing Massey. You've just told us Mercedes, Red Bull have huge teams of people analysing data. Do you think that they analyse how long the safety car period takes? I'd suggest that they do. I'd suggest that's quite an important factor when it comes to determining your strategy and can be pivotal in achieving race results. So that's a factor that they'd look at. You'd think that Mercedes would be looking at that data when making their judgment call for that incident. That's what they did. They've got to assume that whilst they might have said, yeah, we understand the principle and this ideal of this ending under green conditions, but we can't assume that the race director is going to break the rules to make this end under green conditions. So therefore we have to make our decisions in accordance with the rules of the sport, and the rules of the sport dictate this safety car procedure of taking place, which is going to take this to the end of the race. And therefore, Lewis, you're staying out on track. Simple as that. Simple as that.
And what piled up, if you like, in Abu Dhabi was the perfect storm, because it was a championship decider.
The perfect storm. Okay, look at the validation. Look, everybody, all of these factors all combining together, making it what it is.
There were 6 laps to go before.
Championship decider, irrelevant. Same as every league game of a football season. You get 0 points, 1 point, or 3 points. None of them are deciders. Okay, if you win 37 out of, I don't know, that's a poor example because that doesn't work. If you win 36 out of 38 matches in a Premier League season, that's a lot of points. That's 108 points. But if a team wins 38 out of 38, they beat you. What's the decider? Well, one of them games that you lost, 2 of them games that you lost it for you. Doesn't mean whether it's the last game of the season that it was. That's what ultimately affected the outcome. So don't just try and say this is the final. It's not how it is.
Before the end of the race, it was in a part of the track where it was going to be relatively difficult to get the mess cleared up quite quickly. In other words, it was guardrail both sides, but it was going to be fixable. And there were lap cars involved between P1 and P2, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen.
That's irrelevant. Doesn't matter who had done the lapping. Okay, they're lapped cars. If Max would have got through them as well, doesn't matter. They've still got to be unlapped. You still can't go racing just like that. You still can't do it. You've got to release them. If you deploy the safety car before withdrawing that safety car, you've got to reset that race to a 0 position.
And then on top of all that, this pressure of the race not to be finished behind a safety car. So if you put all that together, as I say, it's a perfect storm. And so that's why Michael Massey, I think, came out with these different instructions and at the end of the day got it wrong.
So, and this desire to not finish behind the safety car. Well, as I've just explained in my previous video, that notion of an agreement to not finish behind the safety car is sport fixing. You can't agree that and break the rules to facilitate it. It can be a general desire if the circumstances enable that. But if the circumstances don't enable that, then you have to apply the rules of the sport. If you start breaking the rules to facilitate it, you are fixing an outcome. It is as simple as that. Right, we're halfway through this video. I'm going to call this video a day and I'm going to do a second part. Thanks for listening so far. The other half's to come.